Thank you for joining us today. Just a little bit of housekeeping for Zoom. If you just keep your microphone on mute, you can have your video on or off, and we'll have plenty of time for questions afterwards, or you can type them in the chat throughout. So we've got Jemma here today. Jemma is on our amazing nutrition team at the Heart Foundation. She's an accredited practicing dietitian and nutritionist. She's had over 17 years of experience in the sector. And we've had her at the Heart Foundation coming up to 2 years. So we're very lucky to have her and have her speak to us today. So I'll let her get started.
Thanks, Maddie, and thanks for having me, and hello to all of you tuning in today, and all of you that will be also watching this online afterwards. I know we've got a lot of interest in this topic, and we're really excited to also be able to share the recording with you and the slides after the session. So as Maddie mentioned, my name's Jemma O'Hanlon. I'm Senior Food and Nutrition Advisor, and today I'm here to talk about how to eat for a healthy heart. So hopefully today you'll take away a few practical tips and tricks to put in your toolbox, and I'd love to also hear at the end of the session what you might do differently as a result of what you learned today. So first of all, I'd like to start off by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of land on which we meet. I'm here on the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations. I just want to take a moment to pay respects to them, their elders past, present and future. So a quick overview of what we're going to discuss. So we're going to start off talking about what is a heart healthy eating pattern. You've probably heard the terminology before, but what is really involved in a heart healthy eating pattern? We're going to do some myth busting. We will talk about what to eat before and after a walk. And I know this is really important to you guys because there's often that really important social aspect of walking where you might go to a cafe afterwards or before even and enjoy some food and drink together. So I'm going to give you some practical advice on some foods and drinks that you might like to choose. And then we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So what I'd really recommend you do, if you have a question along the way, pop it in the chat box, or if you like, we've got a group today, a nice intimate group. So if you like, you can always unmute and feel free to jump in and ask a question as we go along, but also we'll have a dedicated session at the end. If you like as well, I'd love to hear and pop in the chat box now what your favourite food is. So pop in the chat box your favourite food, or it could be a drink even, what you like to have. If there was one food or drink you like to enjoy. Cheese, strawberries, excellent. Oh, I think those two go very well together, actually. Nice sort of picnic. You could have a bit of cheese and strawberries. That sounds delicious. Coffee, very good, Tara. That's one of my favourites too. Anyone else? Favourite foods? Because I'm going to talk about these foods today and how or whether they do or don't fit into a heart healthy eating pattern. Toasties, great one, Michelle. I love a good toasted sandwich. Excellent. Okay, we'll keep those flowing in. And also to acknowledge, I know everyone is across the country here, so we've got people from all over Australia, which is wonderful. So thank you so much for joining. So just to set the scene a little bit, I just wanted to share a few quite shocking statistics, really, which is why we do what we do at the Heart Foundation when it comes to food and nutrition. So we know that poor diet is the leading contributor to the burden of coronary heart disease, accounting for 50% of the total burden. So we know that lots of, moved along a bit. We know that 95% of adults and 94% of children don't get enough fruit and vegetables every day. We know that people are enjoying far too many sugar-sweetened beverages. We know that 35% of the Australian diet is made up of junk food. And we know that obesity and overweight is on the rise, with about 2/3 of the population being overweight or obese. And it's currently sitting around 1 in 4 children are overweight or obese. So we do have some challenges on our hands. Of course, we've also had a pandemic, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm sure I certainly was impacted, and I'm sure many other people were impacted in terms of just changes in how we eat, with changes in the environments we work in and we live in, and access to different foods and so on. So I think this is just an important slide to share some of the challenges we're facing, but it also creates an opportunity for us to really look at how we can help spread the word about our heart health eating patterns. And you guys as Heart Foundation walkers, I think this is a really good opportunity for you to share these messages far and wide as well, and we can really try to reach as many people with these important messages. So what is a heart healthy eating pattern? Well, this is it on the screen. So it's made up of 5 key components, and I'm going to take you through them one by one now. But if there's one thing you take away from the session today, it's this slide. And what we like to do at the Heart Foundation is, when it comes to food and nutrition, we always talk about what you can eat rather than what you can't eat. So our messages are always really positive, because we know that's really impactful when it comes to behaviour change. So first of all, the first component of a heart healthy eating pattern are our fruits, our vegetables and our whole grains. So you may have heard the term eat a rainbow, and this is really important when it comes to our fruit and veggies. All those beautifully coloured veggies and fruits, trying to eat a rainbow. They've all got different levels of vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and they're so good for us. We need around 2 serves of fruit a day and 5 serves of vegetables each day. When it comes to our whole grains, we want to go for those that are sort of more darker brown in colour, and that often indicates that they're a whole meal or a whole grain. So thinking about foods like wholemeal pasta, brown rice, wholemeal bread, rolled oats, quinoa, all those foods are really good for us. And whole grains are less refined. So what we know from the scientific evidence base is that the less refined a grain is, the better it is for us. It has the 3 key components in that grain itself, and it has the extra dietary fibre, which we know is linked with reduced cholesterol, as well as being really good for our gut and many other health benefits. So, our message when it comes to fruit, vegetables and whole grains, eat lots of different colours, and then choosing those less refined grains wherever possible. The second component of a heart health eating pattern are our protein foods. And what we recommend, just like our fruits and vegetables, variety is really important here. And you can see there on the screen, we've got a really beautiful image where you can see what we want you to be eating most of versus what we want to be eating less of. So the protein foods we want you to be eating more of are those fish and seafood, legumes, so things like beans and chickpeas and lentils, and then foods like nuts as well, which are really good sources of protein. So we want to try to move towards a little bit more plant proteins, and I'm not talking about the meat substitutes that you buy in the supermarket that are ultra processed and your fake meats. What I'm talking about is really whole food proteins here, the plant proteins. And I think when it comes to the plant proteins, legumes, as I said, like your chickpeas and beans and lentils are the best example. They're superfoods, they really are. And the great thing is, in a time of inflation, they're very budget friendly. actually. And you can buy them canned and they're really easy to cook with. They go beautifully with big and bold flavours, lots of herbs and spices. So we want to eat more of those plant proteins and those fish sources as well. Eggs and poultry in moderation, and reducing our intake of red meats. Now, it's not to say that you can't eat red meat. Certainly we allow up to 350 grams of red meat a week. So that might look like, going out on the weekend to a pub and having a steak once a week, or it might look like, a couple of serves of a lamb cutlet during the week. To reach that 350 grams. So there are ways to do it. What we do recommend is the meats that we really need to be trying to reduce in our diet as much as possible are the processed ones. So things like sausages and ham and bacon and salami. We need to be keeping them for special occasions rather than your everyday kind of meals, because they are the ones that are higher in salt, higher in saturated fat, and have been really shown through the evidence base to be linked with heart disease and cancers as well and other diseases. So we'll keep them to a minimum. In terms of the third component of a heart healthy eating pattern, we recommend unflavoured milk, yogurt and cheese. So what we know is that milk and dairy products have a neutral relationship when it comes to our heart health. They don't seem to increase our cholesterol, they don't seem to decrease it. So they are, though, very rich in vitamins and minerals and protein as well, which is really important, particularly for people like yourselves who are doing lots of walking. For your bone health, these foods are really essential. And for most Australians, 2 to 4 serves of these are what's recommended every day. So choosing those unflavoured ones. The great news is when it comes to dairy, you can choose between full fat or low fat. Gone are the days of the real low fat diets. I think we're all pleased that they're probably done and dusted. And what we know from the scientific evidence base is that we need to be including more of those good fats in our diet. And milk is a good example of this. So the other thing is, keep in mind that there are a couple of foods that don't quite make the list for everyday use under our dairy products. So things like butter, cream, ice cream and dairy desserts aren't included in those dairy foods recommended for daily consumption. Now, what about if you have a dairy intolerance or perhaps prefer to choose plant-based milk products? That's also an option. And what we recommend is, for example, if you're looking for a plant-based milk, soy milk is a good choice, or choosing a plant-based milk that is fortified in calcium. So it's around 100 milligrams of calcium per 100 grams is what we recommend looking for on the label if you are looking for choosing plant-based options, just because the plant-based options are often lower in calcium, which is really, again, important for our bone health. Okay, the fourth component of a heart-healthy eating pattern, I was just talking about the importance of healthy fats, and you can see them here on the screen. I mean, avocado, olive oil, nuts and seeds, other oils as well, canola oil, peanut oil, sunflower oil, also oils like soybean oil, nut oils, macadamia oil, there are a lot of healthy oils out there that you can cook with and that we recommend you cook with. And in fact, what we also know from research is that if you're cooking with a healthy oil, say you're cooking up stir frying some beautiful mushrooms or eggplant or some other vegetables, you're actually going to be absorbing more nutrients from those vegetables if you cook with a healthy oil. And there's also a big myth around the fact that, you shouldn't cook with oil. You should actually cook with oil. And especially oils like extra virgin olive oil, they are not designed because they're a whole food. They essentially have a high level of antioxidants in them, which actually is protective of the oil. So it allows the oil to reach a higher temperature without being impacted at all. So make sure you use these foods in your everyday cooking. Fish, oily fish such as salmon, sardines, tuna are also really rich in those healthy fats. Herbs and spices is our fifth component of a heart healthy eating pattern. So thinking about all those beautiful flavours. So when you're thinking about flavour, we want to try to keep that salt shaker in the back of the pantry. We don't really need that. We don't really need to add salt to our food, and you can get lots of flavour through using herbs and spices, and you can use dried herbs, you can use fresh herbs. Dried herbs are obviously very budget friendly. They last a long time in the pantry. But of course you've got the beautiful fresh herbs, and you might even grow some at home in your own garden perhaps. So also thinking about chili, some people either love chili or hate chili, but it's a great way to add flavour. Also foods like garlic and ginger, pepper, black pepper is absolutely fine to use in foods. And these foods really pack a punch. So try to use them as much as possible. And they're also really high in antioxidants, which are good for our heart. So wherever possible, flavour your foods with herbs and spices. The other thing to note is that obviously there is a link between using salt, so using the salt shaker, or using processed foods high in salt, and an increase in our blood pressure. So wherever possible, again, some people say, oh, I don't use salt, I don't add salt to my meals. But when we have a look at some of the foods they might be using in their cooking, they might be adding a lot of sauces or gravies or stocks or mustards, which can be quite high in salt. So keep in mind that a lot of more processed foods and sauces and gravies and stocks contain a lot of salt. So wherever possible, choosing the low or reduced salt option if it's available, and just being mindful of that. Okay, so how does this look like in real life? So when it comes to plating up our meals, there's a few key rules that we like to talk about as dietitians and nutritionists. So a really easy way to think about it is when you plate up your meal, start with veggies first and foremost. Fill them with half of your plate being veggies or salad if you prefer. Then you've got a quarter of a plate should be whole grains, a quarter should be protein foods, and then you've got your beautiful healthy fats and herbs and spices for flavour as well. So let's watch a quick video on what this might look like. Okay. All right, so let's move on to some frequently asked questions. And again, if you have any burning questions, pop them in the chat box or feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question. So these are the common questions we're asked, and they're really, really good ones. So there's some topics I really want to cover today. So the first one is, what spread is best? So what we know is that butter increases our cholesterol. So it's not something that we recommend for daily consumption. Now, if you're having a little scrape of butter here and there, I wouldn't be worried too much. But what I would suggest that you focus on is other spreads for your daily spread. So, you know, if you're serving up or you're going out or you're serving for guests, maybe a bit of bread, and you might tend to have some butter with that, why not try serving up some beautiful extra virgin olive oil and balsamic vinegar instead that you can dip in there and enjoy? That's much more heart healthy. Or for a sandwich, you know, you might like to spread it with avocado or hummus. Hummus is such a nutrient-rich spread based on chickpeas, and most the ingredients of hummus are really chickpeas, garlic, olive oil, lemon juice, and tahini. So really nutrient-rich ingredients in hummus. Nut butters as well are fantastic, and we recommend just going for the lower salt nut butters and lower salt hummus if you're choosing them. Some of the more supermarket products might have a little bit of salt added, so look for the low salt options, or better yet, make them yourself at home. They're really easy to make, and a nut butter is essentially, if you throw a nuts in a food processor, it becomes a nut butter. So you can do that at home really easily. Okay, the next one is coconut oil a superfood? Now, I hate to share some bad news on this one. Coconut oil is not a superfood, and we don't recommend it at the Heart Foundation. It did have its time in the spotlight and it was on trend. I think that's sort of, you know, we're moving on from that now, which is exciting. What I would say about coconut oil is, you know, there are much healthier oils to use, such as extra virgin olive oil, other nut and seed oils, as I mentioned earlier. You know, on the occasion, if you're making a coconut curry or something like that, and it's once a month and you want to use a little bit of coconut oil, of course, that's okay. But for your daily oil that you use in cooking, we prefer the other oils. Can I eat eggs? This is another great question we're often asked. So the evidence for eggs is mixed, but on balance, it suggests a neutral relationship. And a couple of years ago, in 2019, in fact, we released a new position statement on eggs, and we have removed the limit on eggs. I can hear a lot of people cheering. I love eggs myself. They're such a versatile food. They're packed with so many nutrients, and you know, there's so many different ways you can cook with eggs. You know, great for all you know, ages and likes and dislikes. You can do so much with eggs. So what we do recommend is, if you have high cholesterol or type 2 diabetes, we suggest limiting to 7 eggs per week, and that's just because of if you already have elevated cholesterol. But for the general, if you're healthy in the general population, we don't have a specific limit on eggs. Another question we're often asked is, what's better in terms of, you know, how you should cook your eggs? And my answer to that is, how you like to cook with them is what we recommend. So if you like boiled eggs, great. If you like poached eggs, great. If you like, you know, if you want to fry your eggs in a little bit of olive oil, great as well. The only one to be wary of might be scrambled eggs. If you're going out for brunch on the weekend and you're ordering scrambled eggs for breakfast at the cafe, then sometimes chefs like to add a bit of cream into the eggs to make them really tasty and creamy. So that's the only one to be mindful of. But you can always cook scrambled eggs at home with a little bit of milk, and that's absolutely fine. Okay, what about sugar? Sugar is a hot topic, and you know, continues to be of interest, you know, in the media, and a lot of people, you know, we went through that phase of the I Quit Sugar program, and I think in terms of sugar, the Heart Foundation takes a very moderate approach in terms of what we recommend. And going back to those dietary patterns messaging, you know, when you think about the dietary patterns and that our heart health eating patterns are based on, so the research is around the Mediterranean diet and the DASH, which is the dietary approaches to stop hypertension diet. These are based on whole foods. You know, they didn't have a lot of added sugar that they were adding to their foods. And so what we recommend, if you've got a sweet tooth, choosing those whole foods that are on the sweeter sides, like fruit, which is recommended as part of a heart healthy diet. And of course, staying away from those more highly processed foods that contain sugar, like your lollies and your chocolate and your cakes and biscuits and ice cream, desserts and soft drinks. So we really take a common sense approach with sugar. You know, when it comes to our recipe development, you know, on the occasional time we might use a little bit of honey here and there or something like that. And I think it's around thinking about how we can incorporate really wholesome foods in our diet. For example, if you're having a bowl of porridge and you want a little drizzle of honey, you know, that's okay. Compared to something like going out and drinking a lot of soft drink or you know, having these highly processed foods in large portions, that's when we can get into a little bit of trouble. So then what about alcohol? And a common question we're asked is red wine good for the heart? So what we know is that there's no real safe amount of alcohol that we recommend for heart health benefits. And I think there's been a bit of myths over time around, you know, and perhaps it's also that little bit of bias that if we think that red wine might be good for the heart, then we justified that we can enjoy it on a daily basis. What we know is that that's not really the case, and the evidence suggests that you're much better eating a bunch of red grapes than you are drinking a glass of red wine. Now, it's not to say that you can't drink any alcohol, and of course, you know, a lot of people do enjoy a drink here and there. So what we do say is if you don't drink, don't obviously start. We don't recommend alcohol as part of a heart healthy eating pattern based on the scientific evidence. But if you do drink alcohol, we align our messaging with the National Health and Medical Research Council's recommendations, which suggest no more than 10 standard drinks per week and no more than 4 standard drinks in any one day. What about coffee? Well, there's much better news when it comes to coffee, and I'm a big coffee fan, so I always love talking to this slide. So coffee can be included in a heart healthy eating pattern. And in fact, coffee has been linked with heart health benefits. Now, there's a few little caveats in there, but I'm sure, you know, again, this is a real common sense approach. When it comes to drinking coffee, it is the beans themselves that have the benefits. It's a bit like chocolate, where it's not about the chocolate, it's where chocolate comes from, which is the cacao beans themselves, which have some benefits. So we don't want to be adding a lot of sugar or cream or ice creams or syrups to our coffees. That's not going to be supportive of our heart health. But we can enjoy, for example, a cappuccino or a latte, you know, here and there is absolutely fine. And we recommend no more than 400 milligrams of caffeine per day. And you can see there on the slide that roughly that works out to be around 4 shots of coffee, keeping in mind that if you order a medium to large coffee, often they give you 2 shots in there already. So it might only, to get, you know, the maximum of a 400 milligrams might be 2 coffees a day in itself if you're having 2 shots in there. So keep that in mind. Instant coffee is a little bit lower in caffeine, and tea has around half the amount of caffeine of coffee. And that's an important point as well. It might seem like that, you know, that there's quite a lot of coffee that you can have, but caffeine is found in many foods and drinks, not just coffee. So obviously it's found in tea, it's found in chocolate, it's found in energy drinks like Red Bull and things like that, which I hope you're not drinking anyway, but it is found in other foods. So we need to take into account the other sources of caffeine that you might be having. The other thing that I would say is that we're all different, and we're certainly not saying that if you don't drink coffee now that you should start drinking it. And everyone, you know, the other thing is that genetically we're actually different. Some people are more sensitive to caffeine than other people. You know, I know myself, if I have an espresso shot at 9 p.m. at night, I probably won't be able to sleep for the next 6 hours. Whereas other people can have a coffee and fall asleep immediately. So this is really individual as well, and I think it's important to note, and this is for all the recommendations across this presentation, is that we do recommend that individualised advice when it comes to what works best for you, and that the guidelines shared today are based on evidence for the general population. Okay, what to eat before and after a walk. Here is the fun part where we really get into the practical tips for you guys, the walkers who are out and about, and I know you're interested in some healthy tips. So before a walk, and this goes same message as what we were just talking about on coffee. Some people wake up and they're ravenous and they really need to put something in their stomach to fuel their bodies before they go for a walk. Other people might not feel like much. So these guidelines are very general as well, but you really need to sort of tailor this to your individual needs. So what we do suggest is roughly 1 to 2 hours before exercise, having a small snack, or if you're exercising later in the day, having a meal roughly 2 to 4 hours before. And if you are having, for example, a little snack before you walk, some snack choices which are heart healthy include a piece of fruit, like grabbing a banana. So easy and convenient, and it will really boost your energy. A tub of yogurt is another great option, or a fruit smoothie if you really like smoothies and you can whip one up. And you put lots of fresh or frozen fruit in there even, or even a bit of canned fruit is fine. Some yogurt, some milk, you could throw in some rolled oats or some nuts and seeds, lots of things you could put in there. Whole grain toast with peanut butter or another type of nut butter is a really good option as well, or like a bircher muesli. And make sure you drink water as well. Now, on the topic of hydration, this is really important when we are exercising, because we know that when we are hydrated, our blood volume and our cardiovascular system is going to run optimally. It's a bit like putting fuel in a car. We know that when we put the right fuel in, the car will perform at its best. So, and we know that when we're dehydrated, it can lead to fatigue and it can impact your walking performance. You might not feel as energetic and be able to go perhaps the distance that you might normally go for. So a couple of questions to ask yourself, and this is a really easy way to sort of work out whether you might be dehydrated. Am I thirsty? Because if you are feeling thirsty, then chances are you are already hydrated. So I've got my water bottle right here to keep me hydrated, and I recommend having your water bottle with you most of the day, and sipping on water regularly. The other question is my morning urine dark in colour? Now, I know this is a little bit of an icky topic, but it's a really good way to have a look and see whether you might be dehydrated, and your morning urine is a really good indicator of that. And this is a little chart from New South Wales Health, and you can see there what's suggested is obviously the darker the colour, the more chance you are of being dehydrated. Now, of course, there's a few considerations. For example, some medications can lead to changes in colour and other things as well. So this is probably a really good one to discuss with your doctor or your health professional. But it is a good indicator to know how hydrated you are. The other thing to note, I think a lot of people think that they need to be drinking all these sports drinks when they're doing a lot of exercise. Sports drinks are really only necessary if you're doing over around an hour and a half of exercise, of moderate to high intensity exercise in your day. So the best drink of choice is always water. Okay, so that's before a walk. Now let's talk about after a walk. So the 4 R's of recovery is what I want you to remember today. So the first one is refuel. So of course, when you're doing exercise, you know, your muscles become depleted of glycogen, and the best way to restore those glycogen stores is through carbohydrate containing foods. And those are, for example, whole grains. So for example, you can see there on the screen, you've got your beautiful whole grain bread. That's a great way to refuel. Repair with protein. So, you know, it might be some lean chicken like what's on that sandwich, or it might be a glass of milk, a tub of yogurt, some cheese, nuts, fish, legumes, lean meat. They're all good sources of protein, which we need to help our muscles repair after exercise. Rehydrate is the 3rd R. So again, water being your #1 fluid of choice, but also milk or smoothies are also good choices. And interestingly, milk has quite a similar electrolyte composition to sports drinks, plus it has the benefits of protein for your recovery, for your muscles. You know, I think milk is something that we need to be drinking more of. So, you know, your latte after a walk is not so bad after all, because you're getting that milk in, and also perhaps a few little benefits from the coffee itself. Little video on how to build a heart. Okay, what can I order at the cafe? This is a common question we're asked, and the good news is there are plenty of options. The bad news is often the options that we want to try to steer away from are the ones that are laid there nicely out the front of the cafe and looking you at the face and trying to drag you in. So we want to try to just, you know, think outside the box a little bit and really focus where we can on some heart healthy foods. And the thing is, you know, going back to what I was just speaking about, your body is going to benefit so much from really refueling, in repairing and doing all those things with the right fuel after your exercise. So it's really helping you set yourself up for the next time and the next time, and that then flows on from there. So as I said, the best drinks to choose: water, milk, have a smoothie. And the smoothie, when you have a bit of yogurt or milk in there, it obviously has that source of protein. So it's a much healthier option to, say, a juice, which is just more of the, you know, rich in obviously the juice from fruit. It's not the worst option, but a smoothie will have more nutrition in there, more protein for you. Tea and coffee are also good drinks to have. So, you know, and of course, you know, the cafe experience is a really important part of you know, enjoying that social interaction. So it's just about looking for, you know, healthier options where you can. In terms of foods to look for, so, you know, hopefully the cafes you're going to might have some fresh fruit salad cups available. That's a fantastic option. They'll give you a lot of energy and help fuel up your muscles after exercise. Or you might see those sort of muesli and yogurt cups. They're really good options as well. Chia puddings is another one. Or it might be even having a, you know, some raisin toast or a little scone or something like that. Or if you prefer something savoury, going for that whole grain sandwich or wrap. And I think cafes are getting better with not just providing those white bread options, that there are more of a variety these days in terms of, you know, healthier options. But of course, if you can't find anything, you can always whip something up at home afterwards. Okay, now here are a couple of heart-healthy recipes that I just wanted to showcase, and we were just talking about scones. There's a really lovely recipe for pumpkin scones available on our website, so make sure you jump on and have a look at that. We've also got smoothie recipes on there. For example, we're coming into summer now, almost. I can't wait, and mangoes are already out. I don't know if anyone's tried any yet, but I've been eating mangoes already, which is really exciting. And so, you know, smoothies like a mango smoothie that's on our website, they're a really good option to have either before or after a walk. And then, of course, for bigger meals, you know, meals like a beautiful lasagna are a great way to fuel up, that you might have the night before you walk or the night after your walk to help repair. Some other options, and these are more of your sort of breakfast or snacky type options that we have. We've got some beautiful ways to incorporate porridge or oats into your diet. We've got some trail mix bars and also some savoury muffins. And I'll just show you this hot oats little video. Okay, so we're almost at the end of this session, so pop any questions in the chat box that you have, or we'll come to your questions in a minute. If you are looking for more information about food and nutrition, we've got everything available for you to look at on our website, so heartfoundation.org.au. You can download. I've talked a lot today about what we recommend and the heart healthy eating patterns and our positions on different foods. All the scientific evidence is available on our website if you wish to have a closer look at that. We've also got over 350 recipes on there, so there's lots of fantastic resources. The other thing I wanted to mention, and we had a look at the video on how to make a heart healthy sandwich. The Heart Healthy Catering Guide is also available on the Walking website, and I know Maddie's going to share this with you as well after the session. And this provides some really good options if you are looking to do some catering or to look at some heart healthy swaps. And it provides, you know, it goes into different meal times and you know, what we recommend choosing as a heart healthy option. So make sure you check that out. It's a really great resource. And what I would also say, as I mentioned earlier, is we're all different, we're all unique, we all have different health conditions, and I would recommend really, if you do want individualised advice, always consult an accredited practicing dietitian. So accredited practicing dietitians are the university qualified experts And they're in the position to be able to provide that real personalised advice and support based on your individual needs. So if you want to find a dietitian near you, jump on dietitiansaustralia.org.au. And that brings us to the end of the session. So now we will go to the Q&A, and I will just stop sharing my screen so we can all see each other. And if you like, feel free to pop your video on and we can have a bit of a chat, and you can unmute yourself and ask me a question live right now. Have any questions come through, Maddie? Yes, excellent.
So we have one from Michelle. Is coconut milk or coconut cream still okay for curries?
Yes, okay, that's a good question. So there's a few types of coconut milk that are available in the supermarkets. You might see some in the milk section, and they're often lower in saturated fat than the ones that are in the cans and available in the more traditional sections where coconut milk and coconut cream are found. We don't recommend coconut milk and coconut oil and coconut cream for daily consumption because they have been linked with higher cholesterol. However, I think it's also around how much you have, how frequently you're having it. If you do wish to choose a coconut milk and have it, if you've got a recipe and you're making a coconut curry and it's once a month, you might want to have some coconut milk in that. Another option could be to have evaporated milk, and you can buy the coconut flavoured evaporated milks, or you could use some coconut essence to flavour a regular evaporated milk to get that coconut flavour. But again, I think it comes back to the overall dietary pattern. So overall, moving away from coconut products is probably a good thing if you do consume them regularly, but once in an occasion is okay.
Okay, great. And we have another one from Michelle as well. Top tip for prepping when life gets really busy. And Edith has also asked for some good meal prep websites.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm a bit biased, but I'm going to have to say the Heart Foundation website would be my go-to. We do have lots of information on there in terms of, how to create meals really simply and easily. Some fantastic resources on there. And the other question was top tips for meal prepping. Yeah, I think, for example, often we're rushed in the mornings and we're short of time, we're rushing to work, we've got busy lives. So, for example, one thing I like to do is prepare some overnight oats in advance. So the night before, I'll put some little oats in a container, put some milk and yogurt in there, maybe even some fruit, or add fruit the next day. And then you've got a beautiful, oats that have been soaked in a bircher muesli that you can have the next day ready to go. You might want to add some nuts and seeds even in there to make it even more heart healthy. And I think it's also around finding those windows of opportunity where you're cooking anyway, and maybe cooking in bulk and cooking maybe double the amount. So that way you can freeze your meals, pop them in the freezer, and then you can have them ready to go when you need them and when you're short on time. Or even I think as well, what we do, when we go shopping and we come home, and I know it's a bit of a hassle, but I think if you can store your food well, and when you get home and you've got all your food there, and if you can pop them in containers and in ways that help to keep them fresher for longer, or even do some meal prep once you've got your foods there, then it just saves you at a later time when you may not feel like cooking and you've got your foods ready to go. Of course, you can buy for example, vegetables that have been chopped and are more ready to eat. They are more expensive, so that's the only thing that you've got to keep in mind. So it depends on your budget and what level of convenience you're after. But I think, I'd certainly suggest that we can still make really beautiful, delicious meals that are heart healthy without needing to resort to Uber Eats or other forms of takeaway. And eggs on toast is a great example of that. You can whip up eggs on toast within 5 minutes, and that's a heart healthy meal. Or even if you're really on a budget, baked beans on toast is also a great option. A quick smoothie here and there, a sandwich. Store your bread in the fridge, in the freezer, so you've got bread ready to go and you can just pop it in the toaster and you've got bread when you want it, and it won't go off in the freezer if you're storing it in there. Things like that. So I think it's just around, when you have the moments of opportunity, maximise them, do your prep then and there, and then when you are really busy, you've got things ready to go.
That's great. We've got another one. So thoughts on the low carb diets versus heart healthy eating patterns?
Yeah, I think the heart healthy eating patterns contain a lot of whole grains, fruit, vegetables, which are all carbohydrate containing foods. And there's a lot of strong evidence that dietary pattern is the most beneficial for heart health. And I think when it comes to low carb diets, I think that number one, they're very hard to maintain in the long term. They're also quite challenging when it comes to being socially acceptable and finding options that will work in different social occasions. There's the risk of becoming quite hungry, angry when carbohydrates are our number one fuel source for the brain. They make us happy and they do boost our mood. So what we say at the Heart Foundation is absolutely carbohydrates and whole grains are a really important part of a heart healthy eating pattern. It's just around choosing, as I talked about at the start, those less refined options, the whole grains, the ones that have the 3 key components of the grain still there that haven't been highly refined and turned into a really, like a white bread rather than a whole grain bread, or white rice instead of brown rice. So it's just making those simple swaps, but absolutely carbohydrates are really key as part of a heart healthy diet. I think we've got time for maybe one more question. Was that on intermittent fasting?
So what are your thoughts on intermittent fasting?
Yeah, so that's an emerging area of research, and there's more research that's coming out in that space. There's a lot of research that's also being done with animals, so I think we can never always translate the scientific research that's done on animals directly to humans. So I think more research needs to be done. But certainly what I would say is, I think some people, I'll start again. A good rule of thumb is to give your body a bit of a break overnight. So I'm not saying do a fast, but sometimes when we eat our meals really quite late at night, it doesn't give our body time to do all its digestive processes and do all its cleaning out and sort itself out ready for the next day. So having a bit of a break, and perhaps even having a dinner slightly earlier, will just give your gut and your organs that are doing all that work a break to do its business, and then set you up really nicely for the next day. So there is some research to suggest, for example, that, maybe a 12-hour window, it has some benefits. So, if you stopped eating at, say, 8 p.m. and started eating at 8 a.m. the next day, that might be helpful. But in terms of for heart health benefits, I wouldn't say there's strong research at this stage for the Heart Foundation to make a recommendation around any kind of intermittent fasting diet. And I think it's also, you know, a little bit of common sense in terms of that, you know, if you're eating late at night, or perhaps eating, if your window of eating is greater, then you might be consuming more kilojoules generally. So it may be harder to maintain, you know, a healthy weight, which obviously can impact on, you know, your heart health as well. So I think give your body a break, but I think, you know, the message we want to get across is more around following a heart healthy eating pattern, enjoying those 5 key components as part of a heart healthy eating. And if we can do that, then I think we're on, you know, the really good path to a healthy heart.
Great, thank you so much, Jemma, for that. I think our walkers will get a lot out of that. How to fuel before and after walks, and what to eat at the cafes that we're going to after our walks as well. So that's so great. Thank you so much for that. We will be sending an email out to everyone afterwards, just with a small survey, and we'll make Jemma's slides available, and the Heart Healthy Catering Guidelines will send a link to that. This recording will be made available on the Walking website as well, so look out for that one. And thank you so much for everyone who's attended today as well. So it was lovely to see you all.
Thanks for coming, everyone. Have a great day. Good.